greenhouse smelled faintly of lavender and lemonade. I'd arrived an hour before anyone else, as usual. The rental team was late, so I ended up steaming the tablecloths myself, arranging the diaper cake, tying ribbons to the chairs Lunel had insisted be photo-ready. By the time guests trickled in, some influencers, some family, I'd already fixed the drink dispenser twice and helped the caterers unload their trays. My knees ached, but I stood near the mocktail station with a practiced smile, waiting in case someone needed more ice or another napkin. Lunel wore a flowing white maternity dress with tiny pearl details on the cuffs. Braden stood by her side, quiet but handsome, in a pale blue shirt. When the photographer asked for a few family shots, Lunel turned and said brightly, "Oh, let's get one with Braden's mom. She's done everything for this party." That would have warmed me if her next words hadn't followed so easily. She raised the mic and beamed. "Everyone, before we wrap gifts, I just want to thank someone special, Olvena, our full-time unpaid help. Truly, we love our favorite free servant." The room erupted into polite laughter. Some looked my way, others didn't. Even Braden chuckled. I gripped the ladle beside the punch bowl, smiled. I'm good at that smiling when things sting. But inside, something gave way. Not with a bang, but a quiet shift, like a tree root, finally snapping underground. The rest of the event blurred. I packed up the cookie tray I'd brought, wiped down the counters. I told Lunel congratulations and kissed her cheek. That night, I loaded the centerpieces into my trunk. No one offered to help. The venue was nearly empty. I sat in the driver's seat for a long while before starting the engine. My hands were sticky with dried lemonade. I didn't even realize it until I touched the steering wheel. I stared at them, then reached for a napkin and stopped. I just sat there, hands folded, letting the air grow cold around me. The cradle still smelled faintly of linseed oil. I'd spent 3 days sanding it down in the garage, smoothing every groove with fine-grained paper until the splinters gave way to something soft. Braden had slept in it, once wrapped in a pale yellow blanket with a duck stitched into the corner. I'd saved the blanket too, washed it carefully, folded it like it still mattered. I repainted the cradle in ivory, added tiny bluebells near the feet. Then came the curtains, soft cotton with clouds and stars. I sewed them by hand at night, pricking my finger more than once. On the last stitch, I whispered, "Welcome home, little one," like I'd done for Braden long ago. But none of it made it past the hallway. 3 days before the shower, I showed Lunel the finished cradle, expecting at least a smile. She looked up from her phone, blinked twice, and said, "Oh, this whole antique thing is cute, but we already picked out a high-end crib online. It matches the theme." She motioned toward the garage. "Maybe just put your stuff there, okay?" I nodded. I even thanked her for letting me contribute. Braden stood nearby, fiddling with a stack of invitations. He didn't say anything, just pressed his lips together and avoided my eyes. That night, I baked lemon tea cookies and cinnamon bites for the shower. The oven made the whole house smell like warmth. I labeled the boxes in neat, cursive Lunel's favorites. I don't think she noticed I'd remembered. I carried them out to the car myself. No one offered. Years ago, I took double shifts just so Braden could go on the 4th grade camping trip. He never knew I pawned my necklace for the bus fee. I used to rock him through fevers with wet cloths and lullabies hummed through my own exhaustion. And now I'm something to joke about, a free servant wrapped in pastel ribbons. I stayed up that night, folding more onesies, but I didn't label those. I just tucked them into a box and slid it beneath my bed. I stopped by with a container of homemade carrot ginger soup. Lunel had been complaining about acid reflux, and the recipe was gentle one I used to make when Braden was small and couldn't keep anything down. I didn't text ahead. I never had to before. The front door was cracked open. I figured they were expecting deliveries again. Lunel had turned the porch into a staging area for baby packages and unboxing videos. I knocked lightly and stepped in just enough to place the container on the hallway table. That's when I heard her. She was upstairs, voice lilting, laughing into a phone call. She's just a free nanny and maid. Honestly, I'm just waiting until after the baby's born to move her out. Braden will go along with it. He always does. There was a pause then. More laughter, hers and someone else's. Maybe Seraph's. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My ears felt like they were ringing, but the words repeated anyway. Free. Move her out. He always does. I stepped back quietly, not bothering to close the door behind me. The soup stayed on the table. I walked to my car like a ghost. When I got home, I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I sat in the kitchen with the same folder I'd pulled out a dozen times since last summer, the house deed transfer. At the time, Braden had said, "Just makes it easier, Mom. You'll still live here forever. This just keeps things clean for insurance." He hadn't looked up when I signed. I ran my fingers along the notary stamp. I searched for one thing: my name. It wasn't there. Braden and Lunel were listed as joint owners. I had signed away my place in the only home I ever paid for. And I hadn't even known it. The cradle sat in the corner of the room, unused, forgotten, just like I had been. Romy arrived just before noon, her arms full of lemon tea manila folders, and that quiet, familiar tension she carried whenever something didn't sit right. I had called her the night before, told her, "Bring your glasses and your reading brain." She didn't ask questions. We sat at the kitchen table with the deed spread between us. The paper smelled faintly of printer ink and betrayal. Romy flipped through it carefully, her finger tracing each line like a surgeon looking for a rupture. "They didn't add themselves," she said, finally. "They replaced you." I didn't answer. I already knew. The second I saw that my name wasn't there, I felt it. I just needed someone else to say it aloud. She looked up at me. "All. This isn't shared ownership. You're not on here at all. They filed a replacement deed. You signed it thinking it was an addendum, but it's a transfer. A full one." I remembered the email. Braden had forwarded a PDF and written, "Just sign, this makes hospital stuff easier down the road." Lunel's lawyer helped clean up the language. I hadn't asked questions. I was just grateful he was helping with paperwork. I signed while folding towels. "They could evict you," Romy said quietly. "Legally. This is their house now." I stirred my tea slowly. I didn't cry, didn't yell. My hands didn't even shake. "I know," I said. She waited for the rest, but I didn't flinch. "I'm not getting angry, Romy. I'm getting ready." She watched me like she was trying to decide whether I'd broken or solidified. I stood up and walked to the guest room, pulled open the drawer where I kept my old nursing folders, and tucked the deed inside. On top of it, I placed a spiral notebook and a pen. Romy followed me to the hallway. "What are you writing?" I looked at the blank page. "A list," I said, "of everything that's still mine." The nursery reveal went up on Lunel's page that Sunday, filtered in warm pastels with captions like, "Building a legacy one curated detail at a time." The photo showed her perched beside a tufted glider hands, resting delicately on her belly, a pink and gold L on the wall behind her. She hadn't used a single thing I made. The cradle was gone. The curtains, too. In their place were sponsored items and affiliate links. I commented a simple heart. She never liked it. The next morning, I dropped off a loaf of warm bread and folded a fresh load of towels in the laundry room. I didn't linger, didn't ask questions. I let her believe I was still part of the scenery. Soft, quiet, helpful. Later that week, I took the elevator to the third floor of Dr. Tamar Enley's office, a woman I used to know when she handled end-of-life directives for NICU parents. She still wore sharp gray suits and said little unless it mattered. I showed her the deed, explained the timeline, told her exactly what I wanted. In 40 minutes, we drafted 3 documents: a retroactive trust transfer for the property citing coercion and lack of clear consent, a medical declaration separating me legally from Lunel's emergency contacts, and a notice of default occupancy protecting my current residence rights pending legal resolution. I left the office with a folder thicker than the one Braden had emailed me a year ago. Then I stopped by the county tax office and called in a favor from an old friend. He agreed to look into recent property filings under my name. That night, Romy brought over soup and watched me calmly sew the hem of a pillowcase. "You haven't raised your voice once," she said. I didn't look up, because my words are now made of paper. I tied the final knot in the thread and clipped it clean. And paper, I added, burns cleaner than shouting ever could. The second baby shower was bigger than the first. A sponsored event with branded signage, glossy gift bags, and folding chairs arranged in precise arcs beneath a rented event tent. Bloggers posed with mocktails, while someone from a diaper company handed out samples near a floral wall that spelled out, "Welcome Baby G." I arrived 5 minutes early, wearing pale gray, the kind of color that let me fade into the edges of a photo. I set down a tray of lemon cookies on the side table. No one thanked me, but a woman I didn't know took one and called them quaint. Lunel stood near the stage, glowing in a designer wrap dress, her makeup done in a way that made her look both natural and camera-ready. She floated through conversations like a politician, hugging people I'd never seen before, and posing beside bundles of diapers wrapped in satin ribbon. Eventually, someone handed her a microphone. "I just want to take a moment to thank the people who made this possible," she began. "Our sponsors, of course, and my amazing team. And, of course, Olvina, the backbone of our unpaid village. Truly, this woman is tireless." The crowd chuckled. Phones recorded. Braden stood a few steps behind her, unreadable. I stepped forward. There was a quiet shift, the kind of silence that thickens the air when something unexpected walks into the frame. I handed her a pale ivory envelope. "Effective Friday," I said calmly. "The guest house and nursery are to be vacated. Legal notices inside." Lunel blinked, then forced a laugh. "What's this A joke?" "No, dear," I replied, meeting her eyes. "That was your line." Someone in the crowd lowered their phone. Braden's mouth opened, but no sound followed. Behind him, one of the bloggers whispered, "Did she say legal?" I turned without a word and walked back toward the cookie table, but I didn't stay long enough to pack it up. Let them figure out who owned the air they were breathing. Let them feel what I had felt for months, invisible until inconvenient. Romy didn't tell me before she uploaded it. She'd saved the clip from the first shower, just a short snippet, where Lunel smiled at the crowd, microphone in hand, and said, "Let's all thank Olvina, our full-time unpaid help. We love our favorite free servant." In the background, you could see me, refilling cups, smiling. She titled the post, "How Moms Like Me Get Forgotten." Within hours, it had over 30,000 views. By nightfall, a trending hashtag followed "You Not Your Servant." The baby brand pulled its logo from Lunel's event banner. A skincare sponsor released a statement distancing itself. The curated motherhood event she'd been planning was suddenly postponed indefinitely. Lunel posted a tearful video, thick mascara streaks and shaky hands. She blamed stress, hormones, miscommunication. She said she'd never meant to belittle anyone. By morning, it was gone. Seraph, her ever-busy manager, hadn't posted anything since. The silence from their end was almost theatrical. Braden's message came late that night. "We need to talk. Can I come over?" I stared at it for a long time, then typed only, "No. You need to listen." I didn't send another word. Instead, I opened the window beside my bed and listened to the wind rustle the cedar branches in the backyard, the same ones I'd planted when Braden was 6. I thought of how many times I'd let things slide in the name of keeping peace, How often I'd stepped back so someone else could step forward. I used to think that love meant letting things go. Now I know that sometimes love means drawing a line. The next morning I made tea and watered the succulents on my windowsill. The sun was higher than usual, brighter somehow. I didn't check Lunelle's page. I didn't care about her new follower count. The silence on her end didn't scare me anymore. It was finally just that silence. Not a muzzle, not a punishment. And in my own quiet kitchen, I could finally hear myself again. Braden arrived just after 5, holding 2 brown bags of groceries, like peace offerings. He didn't knock, just stood at the door until I opened it, then followed me in with the silence of someone who didn't know what part of the house he belonged to anymore. He unpacked quietly, setting down salmon arugula, a bottle of mineral water. He even brought my favorite crackers, the kind I used to sneak into his lunchbox when he had spelling tests. He stood near the counter and said I should have stopped her. I should have read those papers myself. I stirred the soup, not looking up. You didn't stand between me and Lunelle, I said. So I had to stand between me and the door. He winced, but he didn't argue. That part surprised me. After dinner, over 2 half-empty plates and a kitchen too quiet, he asked, "Can I stay the night?" "Just here." I folded my napkin and placed it on the table. "You can stay for dinner," I said softly. "Then you go back to whatever you've chosen." He nodded. A grown man with a hollow look in his eyes. He didn't try to push further. He helped with the dishes, dried the last plate, and let the screen door close behind him without a word. Later that evening, I went to the garage and pulled the cradle from its corner. The wood was still polished, the little bluebells still intact. I carried it upstairs one end at a time, careful not to scratch the walls. I placed it in the guest room, not because I expected a baby to sleep in it, but because it belonged somewhere visible, somewhere safe, somewhere mine. That night, I left the door open to that room. I sat on the edge of the bed for a while, smoothing the folded, duck-embroidered blanket across the tiny mattress. It didn't feel like mourning. It felt like reclaiming. Tomorrow, I'd clear out the last box of donated decor and start rearranging the nursery into something new. Spring came early that year. The camellias along the back fence bloomed in clusters, soft pink and stubborn. I planted a new row of basil near the kitchen window, and the soil, still damp from winter, gave way like it had missed the work of my hands. The house felt quieter, but it didn't echo like it used to. It breathed with me now, not around me. I started volunteering again, just 2 mornings a week, in the NICU swaddling newborns while their parents caught some rest. The nurses still called me Miss Olvena and asked for stories. I told a few. Some were real. Braden came by occasionally. He brought groceries sometimes, books other times. But he never showed up unannounced. He always knocked first. He never brought Lunelle. She'd moved back in with her mother, according to Romy, who heard through a cousin that the influencer deals had dried up. Her page still existed, but the tone had shifted. No more nursery tours, no more curated perfection. Just pictures of lattes and vague quotes about growth. I didn't check it again. The old nursery had become my office. I moved my desk in by the window, kept the cradle near the corner, now filled with folded blankets and spare pillows. A soft lamp. A quiet presence. I'd started tutoring again, nursing students from across the country. One young woman from Arizona stayed after our Zoom call one afternoon, just to say thank you. A week later, a package arrived with a small candle, a handwritten note, and a card that read, "You remind me what dignity looks like." I placed it beside the cradle. That evening, I sat on the porch with a cup of mint tea. The sun was low, slicing gold across the garden. I looked at the gate. It was closed, latched, secure. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like someone who had been pushed out of her own life. I felt like someone who had stepped back in barefoot with clean hands and shut the door behind her on purpose. The letter came folded inside a pale blue envelope addressed by hand. No return address, just a city name I didn't recognize. I sliced it open slowly, the way I always do when I sense something heavier than bills or junk mail. Inside was a single page. Neat handwriting. Careful words. I saw the video it began. I saw the way they laughed. And I saw the way you stood up. I walked out of a toxic home because of you. You reminded me that love doesn't mean servitude. I read it twice. The second time slower. Then I carried it into the guest room and placed it beside the cradle. The same cradle I once thought would carry my grandchild. Now it held something quieter, something deeper. My own peace. The house was still. No baby monitor crackling from the next room. No urgent texts asking for favors. No boxes of branded bottles or ring lights glowing in the corner. Just books on the shelf. A kettle warming on the stove. My slippers tucked neatly by the back door. I poured a cup of tea and took it to the living room. The sun shifted across the wooden floor, scattering light through the curtains I'd sewn months ago, the ones Lunel didn't want. I sat in the armchair and sipped slowly. My hands didn't tremble. My breath moved evenly. They called me a free servant, I said aloud. The words didn't burn anymore. They didn't even bruise. I looked around the room, my walls, my air, my name still on the title, now stronger than ever. I smiled, warm and unshaken. But I'm the only one, I said, who left truly free.